Just when you think Seiko has given up on the affordable watch market, they go out and create a brand new automatic in-house movement and throw it into their entry-level line of watches, creating what is very likely the most affordable automatic GMT watch from any of the major brands out there. And yeah, it's pretty awesome. Anyone who's interested in an automatic watch right now, this is one you should probably take a look at. Today we're checking out the new Seiko 5 Sports GMT. Hey guys, welcome back to Just the Watch. My name's Dave. I live in Japan and I love to collect affordable watches. And when you know those two things about me, it's understandable why I'm becoming more and more interested in Seiko. Seiko is one of the best watch brands in the world. They have a huge list of accomplishments in the watch world. They almost single-handedly destroyed the entire Swiss watch industry when they started coming out with their quartz watches. And they are renowned for making watches that are extremely durable, reliable, and relatively affordable. Now recently it seems like they've been going up market, like they've been making more premium watches, more expensive watches, and kind of leaving their affordable segment behind. But a few years back, they revamped their Seiko 5 line with the new Seiko 5 sports models. And this is a historic line of watches. Seiko has been making the Seiko 5 line for decades now, and it was meant to introduce people to the world of mechanical watches. And these Seiko 5s are really known for two things, one being affordability and two being reliability. I get comments almost every day from people telling me they're wearing their grandfather's Seiko 5 watch that they inherited. It's still running perfectly and in great condition. And to have a company that has that kind of a history and that kind of a track record with their watches is a really appealing thing. And now Seiko is back into the affordable watch market in a huge way, and it's all thanks to this new affordable GMT movement that Seiko has created, and this is a great movement. It gives us everything that we like about the Seiko NH35 or the 4R35, which is one of the most popular, reliable watch movements in the world, and it adds a fourth GMT hand, allowing you to keep track of time in 2 time zones at the same time. So let's jump right into it and take a look at the dimensions and specifications of this watch. I measure the case at 42.5 millimeters across, 46 millimeters lug to lug. You are getting 22 millimeter lugs for your straps. This one comes in at right around 14 millimeters thick. However, if you measure to the top of that Cyclops date magnifier, it does jump up to around 15 millimeters. So this watch is a little bit on the thick side. Weight on the bracelet when it's sized up for me is 155 grams. You're getting a Hardlex crystal with a Hardlex bezel insert, and you're getting 100 meters of water resistance. And inside is the brand new 4R34 automatic GMT movement. Retail price here in Japan for the JDM SBSC005 is 52,800 Japanese yen, which at today's exchange rate is around $388, which is not going to last. The exchange rate is really crazy right now. I believe the retail price for the international version in America is around $475. Now, for most people, the design of this watch is going to be extremely familiar. However, I think there are a few surprises that Seiko has thrown in here. This watch features essentially the same style as your standard Seiko 5 sports models, or the 5KX models as they're often called, which were in turn based on Seiko's legendary affordable diver, the SKX. The case shape, the 4 o'clock crown, the bezel knurling, hands and markers are all unique and distinctly Seiko. So it's really cool to see a watch that has its own unique design heritage like this. It's not an homage to some famous Swiss luxury brand. This is a distinctly Seiko design, and it looks great. However, it's not identical to the standard Seiko 5 sports models. It includes a couple of pretty cool upgrades. Most obviously is the addition of a fourth hand on the dial, which allows you to read the second time zone. It's a bold red arrow that is easy to see even when the other hands pass over it, but doesn't overwhelm the design at all. The red color of the GMT hand really adds a cool pop of color against that dark blue dial. And I'm sure at some point Seiko will get around to releasing a colorway that has a matching red and blue Pepsi style bezel, but on this one you're getting a black and blue bezel. And that bezel is also another big change on this watch. Rather than going with a standard aluminum bezel insert, Seiko has put a flat Hardlex crystal over this bezel. This definitely gives the watch a more premium look, and while Hardlex is still prone to scratching, it's a lot more durable than aluminum, so you should get better longevity out of it than you would out of the aluminum bezels. And the coloring underneath that Hardlex is absolutely gorgeous, especially when it comes to the bottom half, which is in blue. That portion of the bezel really plays with the light and really changes depending on how much light is hitting it. When it's in full reflection, you get a very vibrant royal blue, and in dim lighting, it goes almost to black. But regardless of the lighting on the bezel, you do get a very high amount of legibility with these kind of silver colored 24-hour Arabic markings. The shade of blue on the dial is also excellent, as you would expect from Seiko. This is one of the best blue dials that I've seen. Really dark, really rich, lots of different light play. Great job there. On top of the Hardlex crystal, Seiko has added a Cyclops date magnifier. This is something that they've been doing more and more, particularly on their kind of more premium versions of their products. Some people really like them, some people don't. For me, I'm indifferent. This one does a good job of magnifying the date, definitely makes it easier to read, and to me it doesn't really impact the design negatively or positively. The Hardlex crystal, well, being Hardlex, still looks great. It's got a nice bevel around the edge of it, and it raises just slightly above the bezel itself. One area that did kind of surprise me is the case finishing. This watch features a mixture of brushing and polishing. And I think Seiko's actually done an excellent job here, particularly for what is supposed to be one of their budget model watches. You've got some radial brushing going across the top of the lugs and the top of the case, with a high polish on the curved, rounded sides of the watch. But what I really like is that they put kind of a beveled edge on the side of the case where that transition between the curved side and the flatter top is. And that kind of gives the illusion of that polished area sort of wrapping around just a little bit to the top of the case. And the transition between the brushed and polished sections of the case is very sharp, very clearly defined. It's a unique effect that I haven't really seen done before, so it's really cool to see it here, and yeah, very well executed. I feel like the bracelet is another really premium upgrade to this watch as well. This is a 5-link Jubilee style bracelet. It features solid links and solid end links, which I believe is something that's new to the Seiko 5 Sports line. Normally, Seiko puts hollow end links in the Seiko 5 line. I also really like the clasp on this watch. It functions very smoothly, feels very solid. Even though the inner portion is just pressed metal, it doesn't feel cheap at all, and the clasp features 4 micro adjusts, which allow you to get a great fit almost no matter what. All in all, this feels like a premium Seiko 5 Sports model, and while it does see a price jump, I feel like that price jump is pretty modest for everything that they're offering here. I think Seiko's giving you a great value here. Now, the most exciting thing about this watch is the GMT functionality that has been added to this automatic movement. I absolutely love GMT complications. Living overseas in Japan, having friends back in the States, it's one of the most common things that I use on a watch. And this being a brand new GMT movement from Seiko, let's talk a little bit about how this particular movement functions and get a feel for whether or not it's any good. The 4R34 is a brand new movement from Seiko, obviously based on the 4R35. It features a standard 21,600 beats per hour beat rate, meaning the second hand will tick 6 times per second. You have about a 41-hour power reserve. The watch features hacking and hand winding. It's got Seiko's bidirectional magic lever system, allowing the rotor to wind in either direction, so it's very quiet on the wrist. You've got a quick set date, and most importantly, it also has a 24-hour 4th GMT hand. Seiko claims the accuracy of the 4R35 is going to be plus 45 seconds to negative 35 seconds per day out of the factory, which is right in line with Seiko's other 4R series movements. And while you're not guaranteed to get better accuracy than that, you almost certainly will. After wearing mine for a day and then setting it on the table overnight, mine came in with an accuracy of plus 0.3 seconds per day. Using the GMT feature on this watch is pretty comparable to most other automatic GMT movements that I've seen. To set up the GMT functionality, you need to start by setting your local time by pulling the crown out to the second click. This will hack the movement, so the second hand will stop, allowing you to synchronize it to a reference time if you want. Once you've set the local time, you'll want to push the crown back into the first click. From here, you can set the GMT hand by rotating the crown clockwise. This will advance the GMT hand in 1-hour increments across the 24-hour scale. Rotating the crown counterclockwise in this position will allow you to quick set the date. Once this is done, push the crown all the way back in, and you're good to go. Seiko has included a 24-hour GMT scale on the chapter ring under the crystal, as well as one on the bidirectional rotating bezel. This allows you to track up to 3 time zones. In order to track a third time zone, all you need to do is line up the bezel with the GMT hand so that the bezel is showing the time in the third time zone that you want to track. Overall, the GMT functionality is great on this watch and everything works exactly as you would expect it to. Overall, this movement is one of the most exciting things to come out of Seiko in a long time. And while it is a great addition to this watch, I think a lot of people are really excited to see what other watches Seiko will put it into, and perhaps more importantly, what micro brands are going to do once they get their hands on this movement. All right, next up, I want to take a look at how this watch glows in the dark, because I love things that glow in the dark. And it's also a very helpful feature on a watch to be able to tell the time when you walk into a dark room or after you've gone to bed. The lume on this watch is on par with Seiko's other entry-level dive watch offerings, which is to say it is excellent lume. From a practical standpoint, you don't really need lume that is brighter than this or that lasts longer than this. It's cool, and there are manufacturers out there, particularly micro brands these days, who are doing higher powered lume. But honestly, that's just something that's really cool and fun. I don't feel like it actually adds that much functionality. The LumiBright lume that Seiko has put on this watch charges quickly, it's very bright, and when it is fully charged, it will last you pretty much all night long. I put this in a lume test against some of its stiffest competition. We have the Orient Komatsu, and then one of Steel Dive's Seiko ripoffs in the SD 1970. And it was a very tight race between these three watches, with the Seiko 5 Sports GMT hitting a 9 on my J-score scale, putting it slightly behind the Komatsu with its blindingly bright handset and the Steel Dive with its insanely bright bezel. But in terms of actual legibility, I feel like the Seiko 5 actually comes out on top because it has a very balanced amount of lume between the hands and the markers, and both the hands and the markers are fairly large, allowing for a lot of surface area. And while that GMT hand is loaded with lume, neither the bezel nor the chapter ring has any lume on it, so there's no way to reference what time it actually is in the dark on the GMT hand. But it looks cool, and it's enough to get a rough approximation of what time it is in your second time zone. One thing that Seiko has been criticized for recently is being a little bit sloppy when it comes to quality control. You typically get a very well-built watch that will last for a long time, but things aren't always lined up the way they're supposed to be, which is really unfortunate. Now, even though I haven't personally experienced this on any of the Seiko watches that I've purchased, I know that this is something that many people are concerned about, so let's take a look at how this particular watch that I got holds up in the quality control department. The alignment of the chapter ring looks spot on to my eye. I don't see any misalignment here at all. And since this is a friction-based bezel and there's no clicks, you don't have any misalignment on the bezel. Also, as we've talked about, the bracelet is pretty excellent quality for a watch in this price range. Overall finishing is great, and I didn't detect any quality control issues at all here. Hopefully this is a sign that Seiko is working on improving these things, because they've kind of gotten a bad rap for that over the last few years. It is worth noting that I have the JDM model, which was made in Japan, so maybe the Japanese factories are doing a little bit better than the overseas ones, or maybe I just got lucky and got a good one. Now, overall, I really like this watch, but it does have some issues and some things that you definitely need to keep in mind, particularly at this early stage of its release. When it comes to cons, there's only one thing that I don't like about this watch, and that is the fact that it has a Hardlex crystal. While Hardlex is harder than standard mineral crystal that you're going to find on most budget entry-level watches, it is still scratchable, and if you own this watch for a long time, it is going to get scratches on it. Many micro brands are offering sapphire crystals, which are basically scratch-proof in this price range, and arguably from a manufacturing standpoint, it wouldn't really cost Seiko that much more to include a sapphire crystal on here. But this is just how Seiko does things. One final thing that I would note about this watch is that it is kind of thick. Particularly for a watch that only has 100 meters of water resistance on it, I would have hoped that they could have slimmed this down a bit. At just over 14 millimeters tall, it is more of a short sleeve watch than a long sleeve watch, which is kind of fair given that it's based on the design of a dive watch, so it's meant to be worn outdoors and when you're swimming, but it's something that you should keep in mind. But there's also one other thing that you need to consider when thinking about this watch, and that is the price. The retail price of about 50,000 yen or $475 US is, in my opinion, a pretty fair price for what Seiko is offering here. But if this is anything like any other Seiko 5 Sports release, that price will drop dramatically over the next year or two. Virtually every other Seiko 5 Sports watch has dropped about 30% in price, after its initial release, and if that holds true for this one, you might be able to find this watch for around $350 a year from now, which would be an almost absurd value in this GMT watch market. Another thing to keep in mind is that Seiko is almost certainly going to be producing a lot of different colors and special editions of this watch, so if you don't like the 3 colors that are available on launch, waiting a little bit might give you some more options down the road. But even if you can't wait, you would be really hard pressed to find an automatic GMT watch that's better than this for a lower price, even at the retail launch price. Okay, so let's wrap this up and let me give you my conclusion on this watch. I really like it. This is one of my favorite watches from Seiko. I love the fact that this is an affordable GMT watch. I grabbed this one early so that I could review it for you, but if I was purchasing it for myself, I probably would wait and see if the price drops. So if you can wait that long, you're gonna benefit from that. If you can't, even if you do spend the full retail price, you're still getting a pretty good deal because, again, there's not a lot of competition in this price range. But let me know what you think about this watch. Love to hear your comments down below. As for me, I'm getting ready to head back to the US in a couple of days here, so I'll probably take this watch with me on my travels along with a few others. If you'd like to get this t-shirt or some other cool watch themed t-shirts, I have them available in my shop at justthewatch.com. And if you like this video and you want to keep tabs on the affordable watches that are out there, definitely invite you to subscribe to the channel. That'll wrap it up for today. Thank you for watching. I'll see you later. Bye.